Hello, this is Kevin Closson with the PPI Group. Today we're going to be talking about LIDAR surfaces. It seems as of late I've been traveling quite a bit and running into folks asking more questions on this topic, so I thought I'd put together a little video or presentation to hopefully shed a little bit of light on it. The main obstacle when you're dealing with LIDAR is quite simply size. As you probably know or you've ran into, these point files can be absolutely massive, ranging well within the millions. So how do you manage that data? So throughout this presentation, please keep this concept in mind, because this is really the trick. If we can minimize visually the amount of data, for that matter, the actual data that we bring into the drawing, we're going to be way ahead in the end. So I've broken this out really into three main categories or parts. We're going to just briefly touch on style, just setup, and then really the workflow, and that's going to be the meat of the presentation. You know, what to bring in, how to manage that data as it comes in, and then finally how do you compile that at the end of it. So let's drill down just a bit here, talking about the styles. Again, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but if nothing else, I want to at least create one with you just to kind of show, you know, I don't know, if nothing else, it'd be a good tool for you moving forward. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to start with the boundary only, which, if I'm not mistaken, that does come with the product, so odds are you already have this one. So we'll copy that, and then we'll go into that, and we're going to create, or enhance it, I should say, and add what's called a grid view for 3D viewing. And you can see here in the little presentation, notice how it looks like little squares or grids. Think of it this way: when we go to view this final surface in 3D, or for that matter, I guess model, whatever you want to call it, as we rotate that back, I don't want to see millions upon millions of triangles. Well, it's not so much that I don't want to see it, but odds are your computer's not going to do all that great of showing that. You're going to be waiting as it mathematically figures out how to display that. So that's the first thing that we're going to do. Then second, we're actually going to, like I said, go into the meat of it, the workflow. And right off the bat, we're going to create what's called, create a surface what's called by a point file. Now, I don't want to confuse you with that. I'm sure we've all at one time or another imported a point file. We actually bring in and create simple 3D points. This is a little bit different. This is what's called a point file definition. And I actually took a little screenshot from the prospector there, and this is how we're going to bring that in, or that data in. So in essence, instead of actually truly importing a point file and getting, you know, perhaps millions upon millions of civil 3D point objects, we're only going to import the point file externally, and it's going to give us this final product. So therefore, again, eliminating, you know, extra data that's perhaps unnecessary in our drawing. Then we're going to create or bring that data back in using what's called a point format, and I'll show you how we manage that as we go. And this will give us the ability to filter out perhaps unneeded points. And then third, we're going to use what's called a data clip boundary, and this could be used a little bit in different orders, as you're seeing here. I have them sort of, you know, I guess bulleted out: point file, point form, data clip. It doesn't actually necessarily have to go in this order, but you'll see what I mean here in just a bit. And then finally, I'm going to use the simplify surface edit command that's also within the surface creation tools. And then when we have all of that, and I just want to make sure I have this bulleted out here, that we're going to be creating two surfaces. And the idea is we're going to create, as you can see there, a general external surface that is lower accuracy. And that's by design. It's going to save room in the drawing. And then we're going to create a second surface, which is our subject surface, and that's going to be very dense and very highly accurate. And then finally, we're going to get into the creating that composite surface where we actually combine both of those together. As you can see here in my little screenshot, outside is this less accurate, perhaps call it a general or surface or outer surface. On the inside, This is where we want that really dense area for the highest accuracy, and this is actually going to be our subject, all right? And then we'll combine those two into one at the end. And then once that's actually comprised, then this information could either be kicked out through data shortcuts, or for that matter, using LandXML. You could start a completely unrelated drawing and then bring this data in. So now we have a very, very clean and precise surface created from all of this data. Okay, so let's jump over to our drawing here. We'll take a quick inventory of our drawing. Couple things just right off the bat. You can see here is we brought in perhaps a base map. This may be XREF'd in the background. And then what I left in, or left on momentarily anyway, is a couple of boundaries. You can see this one here that's magenta. That's going to be our first surface's boundary. And eventually that's going to be a data clip boundary. And then on the inside, this is going to be our subject boundary. And that too will be also a data clip boundary. So I'm just going to turn both of those off for now. Okay. And for starters, before I bring anything in, I want to create that, or as I said, enhance that boundary only surface style. So what I'm going to do, there's several different ways to do it, but I'm just going to jump over to my settings tab and locate the surface styles here. And in this case, there is the boundary only. I'm going to right click on it and copy this one. And I'll just name this one boundary only, and I'll say something like 3 grid. Now, the reason why I'm creating this is, as I said, keep in mind that we're always trying to limit the amount of information that's being shown on our screen. So when I bring in this gigantic LIDAR file, I only want the external boundary to be shown. I don't want to see a bunch of contours. I don't want to see a bunch of triangles. Again, I just want that outside border to be shown, just so I know that I'm in the appropriate location. And when I switch over to my display tab, currently the border is on, and that's in plan view, so that's good. But what I'm going to do here, once I bring that in, I may want to take a look at it in a three-dimensional view. So if I jump down, or drop down, I should say, the model direction, you notice that the triangles are on. And I mentioned a moment ago, if I rotated this perhaps enormous surface into 3D or into an orbit, you're going to see all of these triangles that can be very taxing on the system. So I'm going to turn that off, and then down below here there's the grids. And I can space these grids, and it really depends on how big your area is. But in this case, I'm going to space it every 50 feet. And you do that by just jumping over to the grid tab here within the style itself. And there's X and Y's, or what they refer to as primary and secondary. I'm going to create both of these as 50 feet. And I can apply that. I'll say OK. And now I've created this style that we're going to use. So before I do anything, or well, we've got that down, I guess I should say. Now let's go ahead and create a surface. So however you see fit, surfaces, create surface, whatever it may be. And let's call this surface, this is going to be that general surface. And I'll just say EG, so we also know that it's the existing ground. And you could describe it if you wanted to. I want to make sure that my contours and triangles are not set as my current style. I'm going to go with that one we just created, boundary only, with a 3D grid. And now we've created that container. I'll expand out my surface. See down here, there's that point files that I was talking about a little bit ago. Now, before I get too far along, let me preface this. I'm going to build this a bit out of order so you can see how every tool that I'm about to show you, or command or edit, affects this surface as it's built. So first off, with the point files here, I'm going to right click on it, and this is under definition, so there's my surface under definition. I'll right click and just simply add. And I'm going to browse out to my file out here, and this is it's right here, this LIDAR Enz common delimited file. And this really isn't that big of a file. I did that on purpose. This is roughly, I think it's 805,000 points. I did that just for learning purposes. Of course, I don't want to bring in 6 million points, so you're going to have to sit and watch it calculate. But again, think of it as you're doing this down the line. If you do have one of these gigantic files, all of these little processes that I'm going to show you is going to limit that information. So as I go down, I've already selected that. Now I'm going to pick my format, and remember that because I'm going to show you in just a moment here how we can filter out using a format. But first things first, let's just see how it comes in. So there's the Enz common delimited file, and I'll say OK to that. And you can probably see down at the bottom it's grinding away, looking out at this external point file, and it's going to, in just a moment, calculate this. This is where I wish I had a little music to play. It's thinking. There it goes. And you can see the white border all the way around this. Now that is the extreme outer edge of that surface. And this is roughly, just I guess for the record here, I think it's about, it's a little over a mile square either direction. Now if I pick on that, you can see that there's my tin surface there that I've selected. And I'm going to take this briefly into the object viewer. And as soon as I rotate that back, there's that grid that we were talking about. So it shows up fairly well. Now again, this is considerably less taxing than seeing all of these triangles. So that's step one. That's good. The next thing I want to take a look at is the properties of that surface that we just generated. And if you go to Statistics tab here, you can see that we have 805,000 points that we brought in. Well, maybe I should clarify that. I didn't bring anything in. I only brought that end result in. But 805,000 points were used to calculate that surface. And just to prove that, if I click on my points, you notice in the split here, there is no points that's actually been brought in. It's just that extreme outer edge of the surface. Again, no points. Just the final product. Okay, so what I'm going to do at this stage is pull up my border that we were talking about, or boundary I should say. So here's that LIDAR extents boundary. Or actually, well, I'll leave that up, but I'm doing this a bit out of order here. I'm going to filter this out, that 805 points out, but this will give us a good visual if nothing else. So I keep referring to this general surface, and what we're going to do is limit the extents of our general surface to that boundary after we filter out some of these points through the use of what's called a point format. So let's jump back over to our settings tab, and this could be done in other areas. You could do this actually through the point import command as well to get to the formats. And I'm going to go up here a bit, locate my points, and find our point file formats. Now if you remember, that LIDAR file that I brought in was an ENZ common delimited format. So I'm actually going to start with this one. There's no need to create it from scratch. And then let's just copy that. And I'll, just like it says there, ENZ. And I'll just, for kicks here, call it filtered for learning purposes. And it's quite easy. Here's the easting, northing, the point elevation. And all I need to do is say, let's sample. In this case, I'm going to cut this down considerably. I'm going to say, let's sample every 10th point. So it'll take the first point, the 11th point, the 21st point, etc. And keep in mind, this isn't a terrestrial survey or topo. This is where they're flying over and just blanketing or machine gunning the surface with points. So I mean, it could be quite sporadically gathered. So at the end of it, by filtering out every 10th point, we should be able to, well, there's no doubt in my mind, we'll be able to chop this down roughly 90% right off the bat. So I'm going to OK this, sampled every 10. You'll see that it falls into my category down here somewhere. And under definitions, like I said, I would have done this, I'm doing this a little bit out of order here. I'm going to delete that entry. And I'm going to re-bring in that same point file using the same definition, point files. Go out, grab the LIDAR Enz, and this time you'll notice it shows up in my list. Let's use the Enz filtered, and I'll say OK. And again, we have to wait here as it calculates. Much quicker this time. And if I pick that surface and just take a look at its properties like we did last time, and just like that, now we're down to 80,000 points for that extreme boundary. Now, two last things we can do to this to continually bring this information down. I'm going to change out the style a bit here so we can see a bit more what's happening. I'll go with the, I've already tested this. Sometimes you'll want to check it on your own just to make sure it's not too dense. If you have too much relief in the land, obviously you'd have way too many contours, which could again be very taxing. I've already looked at this, and 5 and 25 is going to work for me. And you can see how the extreme boundary is surpassing this outer edge here. So again, I'm going to use another little trick here. It's just a simple boundaries. It's rarely used, and a lot of folks don't even know about it. It's one of the newer boundaries. Within my surface, I can right click on it and add, and I'll just call this I don't know, we'll just call it boundary. And the type, here's the key, is I want to use the data clip. And what this does is, think of this similar to like a porthole looking into a point file. It's going to look through this area only and give me a final surface only with points that fall within this boundary. So it's going to exclude all of these out here. So I'll say OK to that. It says go pick it. I pick it. Now you'll notice that nothing happened. So here's the last piece to this. By doing it this direction, I had to find out to make sure everything was in the right location, so I had to start with bringing the surface in before I added this boundary. Everything is matching up. So what I need to do is one last step. I want to go back into the surface properties, under definitions, and this is everything that I've done to the surface so far. So I've exported that, or imported, excuse me, that external point file, and then I added the boundary second. So what I need to do is I need the software through hierarchy to read this first. So I'll take that to the top. It's going to give me some exclamations saying, hey, wait a second, surface is out of date, let's rebuild it. And when I OK this, now it took the that new boundary. So good, I'm satisfied with that. And just to sort of play along here, now we've got that surface down to using 52,000 points. Now the last thing you may or may, this is optional, the last thing that I want to do on this is maybe just bring it down a bit more. Remember, everything is about filtering it down, eliminating data that you don't need. So under surface edits, you can do it here, pick the surface however you want to do it. I'm just going to do it directly from here by right clicking. And there's a simplify surface. And what this does is there's a couple different methods that you can run. Myself, I'm fond of the point removal one. It just takes a look at a surface, and you can set parameters to say, take out points that, and it's going to go ahead and run an algorithm that measures all the points in the drawing in different areas where there's denser points. And you can say, remove points that don't change the surface within, say, a tenth or whatever. And that's what I'm going to set anyway. So I'm going to leave point removal. I'll hit next. The region, I want to use the existing surface border. We just refined it. I'll hit next on that. And then reduction options. How many points? Let's go 100%. Let's remove 100% of the points. And the maximum change in elevation, maybe I'll go up a little bit more considering this is my outer surface there. I'm going to say is, let's move 100% of the, or take out 100% of the points that don't change the elevation within a tenth. And now, if I hit apply, it reruns it. There's a funky little thing about this tool. All I really need to do is hit finish. It already has done it since I've gone into it. If I hit apply, which seems to be the natural thing to do, it'll rerun it. You can keep bringing that down. So all I need to do here is hit finish. And it's going to sift through everything. And it's thinking about it there. And not a lot changed. In fact, very little changed as far as the contours are concerned. So just one last check on this, just to show you this process. If I go into that properties and take a look at my general, now we're down to almost 42,000, almost 43,000 points. So we've brought that information down considerably. So good, I'm liking that. Now, the next thing we're going to do is view our subject. And the idea is we're trying to create this one overall surface with the area in the middle here as our subject and highly dense. And the rest of this, I still need the contours out here for either visual purposes or for, perhaps volume calculations, whatever. But we're creating this very large surface, and we're, highlighting or isolating the subject area. So again, I'm just going to go into my layers here and turn on my boundary. A little tough to see there, so I think what I'm going to do is take this general surface here, and I'll just turn that off for now. So now I can cleanly see that boundary. And I'm going to create a new surface, and this surface is going to be called, we'll just call it subject. And again, I'll do the EG. And style-wise, I don't want all of that information on, so I'll bring it down just a little bit. You could use that boundary only, but I'm pretty comfortable knowing that it should be falling in the right place. So I'm going to just use the one that we just used a moment ago, contours 5 and 25. I now have a container created. Span that out. Expand out my definitions, and you've seen the process already in the last surface that I created. So this time I'm going to go ahead and automatically create the boundary first. So I'll add that. The name of this is, I'll just call it a subject boundary, whatever. The type, we did this last time, it's still going to be a data clip. I'll say OK, and you're not going to see much other than after I have to go pick it. Now it's added in. I can see that there's that black dot there, and it's telling me that it's added. Now I'm going to go bring in that same point file only, and it's only going to calculate information that falls within it. So same idea. I go down to my point files, add, browse out to the same LIDAR Enz. And when I OK this, it's reading, and I may have to do a quick regen. I realized I used the wrong format there, so I just deleted that out. And I'll go ahead and do that same thing, add the point file, and do it correctly this time. Make sure I grab the right point file. This is what I did wrong last time. I just went ahead and kicked it through. I needed to grab the ENZ com delimited. I don't want this one filtered this time. I want to use the one straight out of the box there. This is going to give me the full capacity, or all of the points. So I'll say OK, and we'll wait for that to grind through. And if done correctly, I should see all of my contours fall right within there. And good, it did. So now I have both of those surfaces. And our final trick then with this is, and I'm going to turn that off. I don't need to visually have that compete with anything there. Alright, so then it's really the last step. We just need to combine both of those surfaces, and then this information can be kicked out via LandXML, or as I mentioned, we could use data shortcuts and bring this final surface into another drawing, whatever it may be. So I'm just going to right click, create a surface. I'll name this composite EG. I'll give it the 5 and 25 that I've been using here. And now it's just a matter of pasting this information together. So I'll expand out my composite surface. I'll go down to Edits, right click, and the first one I want to paste in is the general, which is the, again, that external information out here that has been filtered not only with a point format but also with the edit simplify surface command. So I'll bring that in, and now you can see that contours are everywhere. And then again, I'll paste in our subject. That's second. That's going to come in over the top, and it's going to lay that precise information right over our subject. And if I were to take this surface into a quick view, as soon as I bring that back, there, it's a little better. And you can see, I zoom in on this, there's the less accurate and the much higher density of points in our subject area. And then again, however you want to do this from this point, you could just quite simply right click and export that out to LandXML, or like I said, use data shortcuts. If nothing else, I probably would, even if you don't use, if you decide to continue using this drawing, I would recommend creating that XML file just in case. It's a great way to back up that information. So, what did we learn? What we did is we went and we created that, or copied that boundary only, and we added in the grid view. Now, just to kind of clarify, again, my point file wasn't all that big, roughly a little over 800,000 points, but again, I've seen LIDAR files range into millions upon millions. So, and depending on its size, this can be very, very useful. And then we actually created our surface, and the workflow is we built that general surface first. Then we brought in the points through the point file definition under the surface. We then applied a point format to filter out several of those points. Then we added that data clip to trim out a new extreme border, and then we simplified that surface. And that last one is optional. You may or may not do that. Then we created a subject surface, and we combined those two together into one. And that's where I was saying, again, kick that information out and share it however you wanted to. So not too hard. More than anything, a lot of folks just need to be pointed in the right direction. Hopefully this helped out some. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. There's my email, kevinc@theppigroup.com. If you want to see more of these videos, come check us out on www.thepppigroup.com, and we'll be probably pasting more of these every month. So just let us know. Feel free to give me a call. There's my contact information down at the bottom. And I hope to talk to you next time. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.